Growing up in West Auckland, played for the local rugby league team. The biggest memory for me growing up was always going to watch my brothers play rugby. I didn't aspire to be a professional rugby player. I was just enjoying the years of just playing with my friends, and all of a sudden it went from one team to another, and then all of a sudden I'm playing Super Rugby. The most exciting thing was like getting paid. I was just there at the right time, at the right place. No one could take it off me. I look back now, I was like, man, and people still talking about that team. If I could go back again, I would stay away from girls and alcohol. I've got my family back home who've been praying for me. I feel that their spirit, that's what I carry with me. Just being able to put my family name in the history books of New Zealand rugby was a massive part. For me, as soon as I crossed that field, my job was to just kill. Probably the best decision I made in terms of for the family. So that was 2011, and then been here ever since in Manchester. So that's a nice part of the UK. The people are nice, people are friendly. The rugby's great here, but also I think the access to, the airport, town, the shopping centres and all that. It's quite a handy little area where we are. So yeah. After I retired from rugby, I started up my own rugby agency to help and also give opportunities for those who want to play professionally from the Southern Hemisphere, like New Zealand, Tonga, Fiji, Samoa, and that, and to help them sort of transition into maybe professional rugby or even just in a rugby environment over in this side of the world. But alongside of the rugby agency, I work with kids with learning disabilities in terms of autism, ADHD, and learning behaviour. I would like to say it was easy, but it was difficult in many different aspects of life. The fact was obviously not just myself, but for my family as well, my wife and kids. Just for me, it was just being in a routine that for so many years, for 20 odd years, I've been so used to a routine where I come into training, everything's all set out, a plan's already been put in place, and you just go by, what's been planned for the day. And then obviously falling out of that was probably one of the most difficult things. But also being at home, with my wife and kids, where most of the time I'm away at trainings and that, just sort of being home, all of a sudden it's gone from me not being home to me being home. But in saying that as well, obviously COVID hit, which added a lot more pressure to everything. Financially, where we were financially secure, to all of a sudden coming out of rugby, starting my own company, and then all of a sudden not having an income. So that had a big, massive effect on the family. But me personally, I think what got me through was my faith. I think that played a big part in terms of helping me sort of getting through that tough period of time. But obviously for me, what was hard was it was more harder for my wife and kids and that, and then finding my feet, and then obviously getting back into a bit of stability, a bit of routine and that. It took a few years, but I could honestly say that was I'm slowly sort of coming through that tough period and sort of finding my feet now, and I think we're going all right.
You can
try to convince yourself it's business as usual, but with a physical force like Sam Tuitupou coming at you, you know you're in for a long afternoon. Born and raised in New Zealand, but my parents were from Tonga. I had older siblings that were born in Tonga, so obviously English was a second language for the family. But in saying that, you know, Dad was quite strict in terms of us learning the culture and speaking the language as well. So when we were at home, we always had to speak Tongan. But then obviously when we were out of home at school, we would speak English. But yeah, growing up in West Auckland, Te Aratu Peninsula, or Te Aratu North back in the days, it was a quite a nice sort of community where it was a peninsula. So, you know, you pretty much knew everyone growing up in Te Aratu. So I've got 4 brothers and 3 sisters. I'm the second to youngest, so I'm the youngest out of 7. And yeah, and I think the biggest memory for me growing up was always going to watch my brothers play rugby, whether I was a water boy or just a ball boy. You know, for me, just being in the changing room and watching them getting changed and then going out and watching them play, that was a big thing for me. It got to a period in time when I think I was playing for Auckland at the time. I got to play with all my brothers. That was for the Auckland Tongans, where we all got to play against. I think we were playing the Auckland Samoans over in the Waitemata. So I got to play with all my brothers, and I think that's one of the biggest memories for me as well. Was being able to play with them was something special. I didn't aspire to be a rugby player, but I mean, in terms of interacting with my friends and getting out and playing with them, I think that's where it started from the Roosters. You know, walk into training every Tuesday evenings, Tuesday and Thursdays, and then going to the games. You know, we're quite a tight community and you knew everyone, you know, so I was, you know, for me, it was just being part of a team and playing week in, week out with my friends. That was probably the biggest thing. And I think back in those days, obviously we never had social media as in terms of a distraction. So being out of the house was always, you know, kids would always look forward to getting out, you know, playing with their friends and that, whether it's cricket on the front lawn, rugby, touch, you know, we were always out doing something. And parents couldn't get us in the house, you know, because we were just too busy playing around, mucking around outside. I was brought up playing rugby league, but then obviously rugby was just down the road as well. So I would play. It was more of the rep teams that were playing rugby. So I played rugby league and then obviously played rugby as well. And I think my first rugby rep team was Walter Dixon's, which is I think it might be under 13s restricted. So you had Walter Dixon's and Roller Mills. Walter Dixon's was a restricted grade, so you had to meet a certain weight restriction to play in it. And then obviously all the heavier boys would play in the Roller Mills. So because I was quite small and underweight, I would always play Walter Dixon's before the lighter boys, which was funny because some of my mates, you know, they would try and lose weight. So when we had weighing and all that, so boys would normally just go for a run. They normally stay at the coach's house for about a week. So they'll be going for runs and all that and saunas in the gym and that to try and meet the restriction to make the weight. And that was always a funny thing because the boys were just trying to, you know, lose weight to make the teams. Unless if they didn't, then they had to go up and play with the big island boys. Because I was always quite small, I think I always had to sort of prove myself to others. So rugby was the only way that I can prove myself in terms of smashing all the big boys. And it was just something that came natural to me. I don't know whether it was from playing on the front yard of all my brothers and that, and they used to bump me off in that, and I think that's what made me or helped me sort of get my confidence. But it was something that was, just playing for the age grades coming up. I think that was probably what shined out the most in terms of me playing. Almost set to like become a professional player. I was just enjoying the years of just playing with my friends, and all of a sudden, it just went from one team to another, and then all of a sudden, I'm playing Super Rugby. Playing for Auckland was massive for me. But for me, it was almost like being a young age. I can remember like for academy, like we used to get a signing on bonus, and like we used to get like 4 or 5 grand. And that was a lot of money to me, and that was the one thing that I just saw was like, oh, money. So like I'd get it and then save it up in that, or help mum and dad out, and and for me it was like that was the most exciting thing, was like getting paid. But once again, playing professionally wasn't something that was stuck in my head. Like, oh, that's what I want to do. For me, it was just playing and enjoying it, and then all of a sudden I just kept making teams.
Spencer. Goodness, he's not going to pass it, is he? He does. To Rokethoko. Joe Rokethoko. Collins in support. Spencer. Oh, this is amazing. Carlos Spencer.
Yeah, how do I earn my place in terms of the Blues? Once again, it was just something that just happened. The year before that, we had Jason Schumacher, who was playing 12, 13 at the time, who was the captain he was captain of New Zealand 21s a couple of years before I was. So he was always the captain of the teams for the 19s and 21s. When I was coming up and I became captain of 19s, 21s, I was sort of following in his footsteps. But then we had the likes of Lee Stensness, Rua Tupuki, who were also playing 12 for the Blues at that time, a few years before me. We had a Ronnie Clark, who was an All Black. So it was I think it was just I was just at the right time, at the right place. Because once again, for me playing, it wasn't something that I had set my mind to play. I had a good couple of years with the Auckland NPC. Which we had gone on and won, and then obviously I created a good relationship and a good combination of Carlos Spencer, and then for me it was like with the Blues and that pre-season was tough, but I had no sort of intentions of looking to start. I was a 21-year-old coming into my first Blues season, so all that was sort of, it didn't really faze me. I don't know whether it was because I was just not happy to be there, but like I was working hard. But for me it was like, if it happens, it happens, And I was just fortunate enough that we had I had a good preseason games, and then all of a sudden I just got the okay to start, and then from then on, I just no one could take it off me, and I look back now and I don't realize how big that team was, because obviously being at a young age and being at that present, you sort of don't really sort of think of it. It's not until now, till about 10-15 years later, that I look back now and it's like, man, and people still talking about that team. I realized that how special that was, and I think that's something that probably me as a 21-year-old, I took it for granted, but at the same time I was blessed to be able to be part of that squad and to help the boys go on and to win a championship as well.
Big pocket. Here comes Tony Woodcock onto the field, and also Sam Tuitupou. Another Kelston boy. Man who was offered rugby league terms by the Canberra Raiders, but all of New Zealand Rugby Union happy that he turned that one down.
Yeah, obviously putting on the black jersey for the first time and singing the national anthem and doing the haka. For me, it was a proud moment for my family, because I know that my parents had worked really hard for us kids to have a better life in terms of, instead of growing up in Tonga, growing up in New Zealand, giving us a better opportunity. And I think they had given us that. And for me to play for New Zealand and, the highest, rugby achievement in New Zealand was something that I hold really dear to myself, because obviously all the hard work, for me, I did it more for my parents and for my brothers and sisters, for them sacrificing a lot, for me to be able to do or pursue my rugby career, because I know it was tough. Like, I believe that my older brothers were better players than me, but my parents, because my dad was strict, he wouldn't let us play on a Sunday. Sunday was a Sabbath day, and it was important that we all had to go to church. But my brothers used to take me to, we'll go to church and then come back, and my brothers used to take me to rugby or rugby league games without my parents knowing, so I think that gave me the opportunity. And I think once putting on that jersey and singing the national anthem and doing the haka was probably, obviously the biggest highlight of my rugby career, because just being able to put my family name in the history books of New Zealand rugby was a massive part. My faith growing up had been a big part of my upbringing. Mum and dad were strict in terms of going to church, Methodist. So, just being away, I always had my parents and that praying for me, great aunts, auntie and uncles, and the rest of the brothers and sisters, So being away for me was being quite tough, but knowing that I had my family praying for me and looking over me as well, I think that played a big part in terms of me getting to where I was in rugby, but also sort of helping me after rugby as well. It was a tough decision. If I could go back again, I would, well, I wouldn't change it, because, there was a decision in my life where I had personal reasons that, things weren't working out. And then obviously there was a choice that I had to make in terms of moving abroad, but in saying that, coming abroad I never had any intentions of going abroad, but the opportunity was there, and I made that decision, and I never looked back, to be honest. As much as, I always encourage everyone, especially the young kids, if you get an opportunity to travel the world of rugby, do it, because, you grow so much, and not only a person, but also as a rugby player as well. Because you experience different coaching, different lifestyle, different culture, and it just helps you grow as a person, because instead of being stuck in your normal ways or your, where you're comfortable with, you're not going to grow as a person. So just being able to go out of your comfort zone is gonna make you a better person, and I think that's made me a better person as well. And I've got two beautiful stepkids and Daniel as well, and my wife now, who supports me in everything I do, and and I enjoy it. I'm happy, but yeah, there comes a time in your life when you got to make a decision, and at the moment, the UK is my home for now. But I do miss everyone else back home in New Zealand and Tonga and that. So yeah.
Dre, you brought the weather with you, man. Charlie, get up.
Straight sprint. Yep, good.
Good. Daniel tries to do quite a bit, most days. He plays basketball as well. So obviously working on his basketball skills as well. These transferable skills that you can use from basketball to playing rugby as well, with footwork, agility, hand and ball, hand and eye coordination, just things like that helps them sort of do extra stuff that you can't do in a rugby field or rugby training. That just sort of strengthens up their trainings and their muscles, little muscles that they use. There, better, good. I'll make sure you still hug me when you're after you up. Good, that's one, good. Make sure you wrap. Yep, so obviously moving from New Zealand to the UK, Worcester was my first club. And yeah, I really enjoyed Worcester. I couldn't ask for a better place to move to, because it was almost like moving out of New Zealand, but not moving out of New Zealand, because we had so many Pacific Island boys there. I had a great community of sort of New Zealand boys, Australian boys, but there were quite a lot of foreign boys there. So it was a pretty good time. 2.5 years I was there, and I made some really good friends, and not only just rugby, but outside of the rugby community as well. So which I still keep in contact with. So I was on my way to look to move back to New Zealand, and then obviously got the opportunity to play in Munster. I played my season there in Munster, and I got to meet all my Irish family, which was a really good feeling. I love Ireland. Ireland almost makes me feel like I'm back in New Zealand, just because you're surrounded by the ocean. You get to go to swimming whenever you want. Probably not in the winter, but just the fact of just seeing the ocean or the water, just makes me feel like at home. And it's green too, and the people are great too. Great, they're really great. They love their rugby over there, but it was just nice to have my Irish family around too, which I got to meet and hang out with them, and no, I enjoyed that. My kids had just moved back with mum, and there was an opportunity for me to head back home to play Super Rugby as well, and then obviously got a phone call from Steve Diamond, and he was wanting me to come back to the UK, and obviously Elizabeth was in the UK as well. We just got engaged, so I just felt it was probably the best time to sort of to move back and to settle down as well. So moved back to the UK to Sale, and I gotta say that was probably the best decision I made in terms of for the family. And then so that was 2011, and then been here ever since in Manchester. So yeah. Well, do I get nervous enough before games and that, or unsettled? In terms of nervousness, of course, But for me, like I said before, I think because of my belief and my culture, and knowing that I've got my family back home who've been praying for me, I think that's what I carry with me. I carry that strength of being prepared, because even though I'm miles away from home, I feel that their spirit is with me. I'd pray every time before games and that, leading up to the games and that, and I always knew that as long as I did the hard work in that, and believed in the right things, and that had the big man looking over me, So for me, it was about just going out there and expressing the talent, the gift that God had given me. Yeah, I was always just chilled. I'd like to just chill out, don't take things too seriously, and just, for me, once I got on that field, it was just enjoying sort of just helping the boys. Everything I did my job was to try and smash the other guys, and anything to do to help the boys and that on my team, then I would do, So, and that's something that I really enjoyed, because it gave me a sense of belonging when you do something good and everyone pats you on the back of the head, and that, you know, just gives you even more that you want some more. So, and that was one thing that I really enjoyed, was seeing my teammates and they're happy, and, you know, and knowing that I did something to help them was all worthwhile. You know, you can, it's about switching from not having a game face to game face, you know, and for me growing up, you know, for me, as soon as I crossed that field, my job was to just kill, you know, just kill whoever has got the ball, you know, and that was always the mentality of me, was like, whoever's got the ball, just smash them. And I was lucky enough to be able to do that. But, you know, in terms of smashing people, there's a system to work, you know, because obviously you got to do it with the other boys as well. So, you know, it made it easier when I had guys outside me. They were big in that, because then obviously guys wouldn't want to run to them because they saw the big guys. So they always look at me because I was the smallest, and then they always run to the smallest guy. But then obviously it got a bit harder because everyone knew I obviously came with that reputation, so everyone was running away from me. But yeah, you know, that's the one thing that I really enjoyed, was the contact. Still do now, you know, obviously the rules and the laws have changed a bit now. So, but yeah, no, contact was always probably like the part that I really enjoyed. You know, and I always see defense as an opportunity just to rip into someone. Times when I felt burnt out was probably pre-season. Probably preseason. Yeah, preseason was always tough. But the thing is, it was only tough if you didn't put in the hard work. And unfortunately, flying all the way to New Zealand and hanging out, you know, having mums cooking and that, it was tough to try and put in the hard work. But, you know, that's what's good about rugby, is that you enjoy your time away and that, and when it's time to sort of work hard, you work hard. But the thing is, as you get older, things get tougher. But at the same time, you know, you sort of, it was one thing that always brought the team together, was that preseason, because no matter how fit you were, it was always going to be tough. I was fortunate, you know, I had some good trainers that were a bit lenient on me. But I remember some preseasons where me and you used to run together, and oh man, there was some tough sessions. And sometimes I look at you and you just carry on running. I'm like, oh my gosh, how do you do this? But yeah, preseason was always the toughest part. But at the same time, it sort of brought you together as well, because no matter how tough it got, you know, you always had to dig deep. And it was good because you had guys that would like tell you that you need to push harder because you weren't working hard enough. But that's the thing. That's what I liked about it, because everyone was accountable for each other, you know, and we pushed each other hard. Even when boys come back and weren't fit, you know, we always did the extras to get fit again, ready for the first game and that. So yeah. One word of advice for my kids that are playing rugby: stay away from girls and alcohol. Yeah, I guess, you know, for me, the one thing I always tell my kids now is to do the little things to the best of your ability, whether it's just the basic skills, because that's something that a lot of kids in that take for granted. You know, just those little skills where you're just passing and that chipping. You know, always just keep doing those, because when you get older and you lose your speed and that, you know, those are the things that are going to get you through, you know, just doing the basics right. And I think, you know, my kids are quite lucky, because I wouldn't say lucky, but, you know, nowadays there's so much pressure on these kids, where when I was growing up, yeah, for me, it was just about enjoying it. You know, that was always the main thing. But now it's become too professional, where now everyone wants to aspire to be a professional rugby player. So everyone's training twice as hard. So now, you know, the pressure of kids and like wanting to make it, it's just, you know, massive. So what I say to the kids, just enjoy it, you know, train hard, work hard, but at the same time, enjoy every single moment. You know, even if you're wanting to play rugby, you know, just to enjoy it, to travel the world, you know, do it, because you can. It's possible now. And rugby is a global game. You know, if you want to just travel the world, use rugby as a tool to travel the world. Play a bit of game, play a bit of rugby here and there, and play for different teams. You get to go to places like Portugal, Spain, Russia, places that you wouldn't even think of going to, that you can get the opportunity just to go and play rugby. I think for me, just personally, just representing New Zealand, the All Blacks. That's probably one of the biggest thing. One of the biggest achievement for me is once again, is just being able to put my family name up there in a prestigious sporting, especially in New Zealand. So having something there, it's special because it's something that my family can look at and be proud of. Probably meeting Nelson Mandela is probably a massive one of my highlights. Winning the Super Rugby is another highlight. Making the All Blacks singing the national anthem and doing the haka is probably another massive thing for me. But then having the opportunity to play rugby alongside my brothers is another one. But then also playing with my kids too in Malaysia, that was a massive highlight. So yeah, there's been quite a few moments that I sort of look back and cherish, but those are probably the most personal ones that stick dearly to me.
He's flown all the way from Manchester, England for this fight. Ladies and gentlemen, he's ready to go to war. Put your hands together for Sam Tuitupou.
Like I said, that transition out of rugby has been tough, and it's not until you're outside of the rugby culture or the environment, because I've been doing it for so long. I think for me mentally, just finding something to train for is, to give you that motivation. And because of rugby, you train every week, knowing that at the end of it, there's a rugby game. So for me personally, just to train on my own has been a bit of a battle in terms of trying to keep fit and all that, but just that motivation. So when the opportunity came up in terms of fighting, I was happy to sort of put my hand up, because for me it was about, I said to my wife, for me it's not about winning, it's about me training towards something, because I missed that competitiveness of training, working hard, and then at the end of it you got a game. So I worked hard for the boxing, and got myself fit. I probably wouldn't say I was probably at the fittest that I've been, because I had COVID leading up to it as well, so which had a big effect on it. But I spent a week in New Zealand sort of training with some really good friends who are boxing trainers over there, the Peach Boxing, and they got me sort of nice and fit, ready for the fight and that. And yeah, and then obviously had the fight, and I had a pretty good win. I still feel that mentally and physically I'm still fit enough to be able to do it. So it was just a nice opportunity to sort of test myself as well. So yeah. Ooh, that's a tough one. I'm sorry, but I'm gonna have to say Mike Tyson. Gotta say All Blacks. No, I'll change that. Probably Blues 2003. Island Life. Oh, KFC. Ooh, that's a tough one. Midfield, I'm gonna have to say Tana Umanga. Ooh. Jonah. Jonah Longwood. Yeah. He was too far out and too fast for me. Ooh. Tomari. Is it Tomari? Ooh. I'll have to say boxing world champion. Ooh. Best teammate ever. Oh, that's a hard one. I think there'll be going to be a lot of haters out there. I think the one I sort of ruined with the most, Benatinga. Tackle. Quiet location with family. Come on, people always come back to.
And the last one, the dreams come true.
Yes, dreams come true.